Secondly, wearing the helmet of salvation has the justification component. And remember, justification, 2 Corinthians 5:21, means that he, God, made him, that's Christ, to become my sin. My sin all went on Jesus. I came away from that event with him having my sin and me getting credited to me his righteousness. So God treats him this way. Now I'll show you the next slide. What is the justification component? It means I behave like I know my file has changed to no record of any crimes. So I never again have to feel dirty and stained and troubled. I had an amazing week, Bonnie and I did. We spoke to the United Indian Missions Native Peoples missionaries that work in Canada, here in the U.S., and in Mexico. And at one of the events, I was preaching on this. Actually, I was preaching the series I did a while back on David. And I was preaching on this. One of the missionaries came up to me and said, I must talk to you with my wife. I said, and I must listen to you with my wife. So when do you want to meet? And so we met. And by the way, we were in Nebraska. We were so far from anywhere. There was no cell phone coverage. Bonnie and I confessed we had never seen a cornfield so large. If you stand on this side of, I think it's Interstate 80, as far as you can see, it's not like Schoolcraft where it's individual fields. It was one field. I'd never seen miles of corn with no breaks other than those little, where those tires go when they're squirting water, whatever you call those things. That's the only thing that broke the unbroken horizon of corn. And then if you turn and look north from I-80, it's the same thing. And if it's not corn, it's cows. And if it's not cows, there are flies. So if you want to go to Nebraska, corn, cows, and flies, there. And no cell coverage. But we were out there with all those missionaries, and this missionary looked at me and said, I live 4 to 6 hours from any city. I'm out on a reserve, not a reservation, a reserve with native peoples, and I'm sharing the gospel, and I have been unable to keep sharing it because I keep realizing that, and I think he told me that he has asked the Lord to forgive him and deliver him from the same sins that he was dealing with in his home church in America. Now he's out in the wilds of Canada somewhere, and he says, for the millionth time, I've asked the Lord to forgive me and cleanse me. And then he went, it hasn't been the millionth. I think it's only the 900,000th, and now I'm not telling the truth. And I thought, you're just beating yourself up as much as possible. I said, wait a minute. Let's forget about you for a minute. I said, what are you telling those native peoples? Oh, he said, I'm telling them that they have a fresh new start in Christ, and he'll forgive all their sins, and that no matter what you do, you can't make God love you any more or any less. I said, So that's the gospel you're proclaiming? He said, I said, you're carrying around your personal application of that to your life. I said, you're proclaiming the gospel of hope, but you're not living it. And that's impairing your ability to keep proclaiming it. In fact, when you find a Christian that can't really share the gospel of hope with someone, it's probably because they're not living it. And if you live it, you behave like you know the file has changed to no record of any crimes. You don't feel dirty. You don't feel stained. You don't feel defiled. You don't feel hopeless, because you know that the justifying death opens for me the sanctifying life of Christ. And God has erased the record of all my sins. See, we need to not just have that in a box or on the shelf or carrying around our helmet. We need to put on and behave like we believe that. It was really interesting to sit across from him and to realize, this missionary, that his inability to dispense the gospel of hope was because of his inability to live the gospel of hope, and to see that click in his mind. To realize that if Jesus paid for one of my sins, he's paid for all of them. And if he hasn't paid for any one of my sins, he hasn't paid for any of them. because he doesn't pay for them piecemeal. He took them all, past, present, future, in one sacrifice. And he justified me, changing the record, erasing that I'd ever committed those. So, if I'm wearing the helmet of salvation, and I'm feeling dirty and defiled and stained, there's something wrong, because if you wear that helmet, I believe and behave like I'm not stained and defiled and dirty.